Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I was born in the UK, but my family moved to the French-speaking part of Switzerland when I was 4 years old because of my dad's job. I became completely fluent in French just by being immersed in it at school. By the time I was 14, I could switch between English and French without missing a beat. I was actually the only student besides our English teacher who spoke fluent English, so I often helped new English-speaking students adjust to the school. One morning, I got called to the dean's office through the intercom. My heart started racing because usually getting called there meant you were in serious trouble. When I walked in, I saw the dean at her desk with our language teacher, and across from them sat a mother and son who looked Middle Eastern. The dean explained that the son had just arrived and only spoke English. She wanted me to help him around school and with communication since we shared all the same classes. The mother looked me up and down before finally nodding that I was acceptable to help her son. The first few weeks went fine, and the son was actually pretty friendly at first, and I helped him learn basic French for daily communication. But everything changed when I started missing school due to my declining mental health. I'd been severely bullied the previous year, and by May, I was struggling with depression and suicidal thoughts so bad that I was afraid to leave my house. After I missed 3 days because I was in the mental health unit at the hospital, the son confronted me. He demanded to know where I'd been and complained that he got detention because he couldn't understand the homework. When I asked if he'd even tried attempting it, he admitted he hadn't even made an effort, claiming he didn't understand anything. I knew he was lying. The homework was basic enough that he could have at least tried with what I'd taught him, but I was too exhausted to argue. A few days later, when I missed another day for my hospital appointments, his mother was waiting for me at school. The son approached me while she glared from a distance. He started demanding that I teach him French for an upcoming test. When I told him I'd already taught him what he needed, he insisted that I make him as fluent as I was. I explained that it was impossible to do that in just a few days, which made him explode with anger, threatening that his mother would get me kicked out of school. His mother then grabbed my arm and spun me around, threatening to go to the headmaster if I didn't teach her son. I tried explaining that I was helping as much as I could at school but couldn't do more. She demanded to know why I kept leaving school early, and when I told her it wasn't her business, she started screaming about how it was her business because I wasn't helping her precious boy. I pulled away and left since she wasn't even supposed to be on school grounds. By mid-May, my mental health had deteriorated so much that the hospital unit signed me off school for the rest of the year. The son had my Instagram, I never gave him my phone number, and kept demanding I teach him. Finally, I told him about my mental health struggles. He insisted I call him, so I used an app to hide my number and recorded the call for safety. During the call, he immediately started screaming, accusing me of lying. When I asked what he meant, he went on a rant about how I was making up mental health problems to avoid teaching him, and then declared that, as a girl, I should respect him as my superior because he was a boy. I was staying at the hospital unit then, and we had a planned museum trip the next day, so I told him to meet me there if he wanted to talk in person. Sure enough, he and his mother showed up while I was with my friend from the unit and one of the nurses. His mother stormed over, screaming that I was a lying brat who was faking mental illness to make her son fail and taking up hospital space from people who needed it. I started crying. Depression and anxiety will do that, and the nurse intervened, asking why she was yelling at me. The mother kept screaming about how I was lying and refusing to teach her son. The nurse tried explaining that we weren't psychos but patients, and mentioned she had 2 months of medical records proving I needed to be there. The mother grabbed my arms hard, knowing I had self-harm wounds under my sleeves. She yanked up my sleeves and actually dug her nails into my scabs to make them bleed. Security finally pulled her off me, and the nurse helped bandage my arms. The police came and listened to my recorded call and saw all his harassing messages. His mother ended up getting arrested and charged with assault. She got a year in prison instead of just community service because she had deliberately targeted my wounds. Her son got expelled, and I got a restraining order against both of them. The son failed his French exam spectacularly. Turns out refusing to do any work and just harassing your tutor isn't a great learning strategy. I've been fascinated with trains since I was 5 years old. My grandfather worked as a railway engineer for 40 years, and he would often take me to watch the massive locomotives roll by. He'd tell me stories about his adventures on the railways, the places he'd been, and the people he'd met. When he passed away, he left me his prized collection of model trains, which sparked my lifelong passion for model railroading. Over the years, I specialized in O-scale models of British railways, particularly the Great Western Railway. It's not a common choice here in the United States, which makes my collection quite unique. I've invested countless hours and a significant portion of my savings into building this collection, with some pieces costing well over $1,000. This incident happened at our local mall's annual Model Railroad Fair. I've been participating in these shows for about 7 years, always taking extra precautions to protect my displays. I had a custom-made plexiglass barrier installed around my layout to keep curious hands away from the delicate models. That day, I was excited because I'd just received a new locomotive I'd been waiting months for. It was a brass Great Western Railway King-class locomotive, handcrafted in Japan, and it had cost me nearly $1,200. I had just gotten it running on my 3-track staging system when I noticed a woman watching the display. I heard her commenting about how cute the little toy trains were. When I approached to help, she immediately told me her son liked trains and asked how much I wanted for the one that was currently running on the track, pointing to my brand new King-class locomotive. I politely explained that it wasn't for sale and tried to make her understand these weren't toys, but collectible scale models. I even mentioned the locomotive's actual cost, hoping she'd understand its value was nearly $1,000. She scoffed at my explanation and insisted on offering me $10 for it, claiming that was more than enough for a toy train. I decided to ignore her and focused on setting up my next train. That's when I heard a strange noise. To my horror, I saw her reaching over the plexiglass barrier, grabbing my new locomotive off the track. I shouted for her to stop and put it down immediately. She was startled by my shout and dropped the locomotive. The sound it made when it hit the floor was devastating, a horrible crunch that told me instantly it was destroyed. The brass body was crushed and several detailed parts had broken off. Instead of apologizing, she kicked my $1,000 locomotive under the table while dismissing it as just a stupid toy. She even had the nerve to lecture about how grown men shouldn't be playing with toys anyway. When she tried to leave, mall security stopped her. They told her she needed to stay put while they called the police. She protested, claiming she'd seen the exact same train at Walmart for $20 and accused me of trying to scam everyone. When the police arrived, they took statements from multiple witnesses who had seen everything. Karen was arrested for destruction of private property, and the mall permanently banned her from the premises. But the story doesn't end there. I took her to small claims court for the cost of the locomotive. During the hearing, she actually brought in a toy train from Walmart. The judge asked if she had any proof that the item she destroyed was the same as the toy train she'd brought. She just kept insisting that old trains were toys, mentioning how her son had dozens of them, and accused me of trying to scam her. I presented my original purchase receipt, documentation of the models, limited production run, and statements from other collectors about its value. I even brought photographs showing the intricate detail and craftsmanship of the now destroyed locomotive. The judge awarded me $1,200 for the replacement cost, plus an additional $800 in punitive damages. Karen was also sentenced to 100 hours of community service and ordered to take a property respect course as part of her criminal sentence. Her community service was assigned to our local railway museum, where she had to spend her weekends helping maintain their model train displays under the supervision of other model railroad enthusiasts. I heard from a friend who volunteers there that by the end of her service, she had actually learned to appreciate the artistry and craftsmanship that goes into model railroading. I've been a government housing consultant for over 15 years, helping low-income families navigate the complex web of bureaucracy to secure stable housing. My role has exposed me to countless stories of struggle and resilience, but none quite like what happened during the devastating 2003 bushfires in Australia's capital city. My close friends, a lovely couple with 3 young children, lived in government housing in one of the suburbs hit hardest by the fires. I had helped them secure that home 2 years prior after the husband lost his job due to a workplace injury. They were good people who had fallen on hard times, and I was glad to help them through the system. The day the fires reached their neighborhood, they barely had time to gather their children and flee. The inferno consumed everything: their belongings, family photos, documents, and of course, their house keys. All that remained was a foundation surrounded by ash and melted metal. A week after the fires, I accompanied them to the government housing office to file their insurance claim. That's when we met him, a stern-faced insurance representative who embodied everything wrong with bureaucratic inflexibility. The insurance representative coldly told us that despite understanding our situation, rules were rules, and we needed to return the master keys before he could process any claim or relocation. My friend tried to explain that the keys had burned in the fire and literally melted, asking how they could possibly return something that no longer existed. The rep simply repeated that without the original master keys, he couldn't process the claim as it was standard procedure. My friend, growing increasingly frustrated, pointed out the obvious, that there was nothing left to lock, no house, no doors, everything was gone. The representative just kept saying he sympathized with our situation but had to follow protocol. The government provided them with a free legal aid lawyer, a sharp young professional who spent days trying to reason with the insurance office, but the rep wouldn't budge. The lawyer argued that it was absurd for clients who had lost everything in a natural disaster to be stuck on such a technicality, asking if there weren't provisions for exceptional circumstances. The representative simply kept repeating that the policy was clear. No keys meant no claim processing, with no exceptions. Watching my friends suffer through this nonsense made my blood boil. That's when I remembered something from my years of experience. The policy specifically mentioned master keys, but never specified they had to be the original ones. I went to a local locksmith and bought a blank key, the most basic one they had. The next day we walked back into the insurance office. When I presented the keys, the representative immediately protested, saying they were clearly not the original keys. Our lawyer smoothly countered that the policy only required master keys to be returned, and these keys were indeed master keys. They could open every lock on the property right now. The representative spluttered that it was ridiculous, and there was no way these were the official keys. Our lawyer calmly suggested that he was welcome to visit the property and verify for himself that these keys would successfully open every single lock currently standing on the premises. After all, there were no locks left to open. The insurance rep's face turned red as he realized the trap he'd walked into. He shuffled through his papers looking for any policy clause that could save him from this logical checkmate. When he weakly protested that this was clearly not what the policy intended, our lawyer shut him down by asking if he'd like to explain to a judge why he was denying valid claims to bushfire victims over a technicality that had been satisfied. The rep's shoulders slumped in defeat. He processed their claim that afternoon, and my friends were able to move forward with rebuilding their lives. But the story doesn't end there. Their lawyer, impressed by our creative solution, used the same strategy for other families affected by the fires. One by one, bushfire victims started showing up with blank keys, citing our case as precedent. The insurance office couldn't deny them without appearing blatantly discriminatory. The rep who had given us such a hard time was eventually reassigned to a different department. Rumor has it he developed a peculiar eye twitch whenever someone mentioned keys. 8 months later, not only had my friends moved into their rebuilt home, but their entire street had been restored. I'm the youngest of 4 siblings, and somehow I ended up being the black sheep of the family. Not because I did anything wrong, I just chose a different path. While my siblings all settled down, got married, and started having kids before they hit 30, I focused on my career in graphic design and moved to the city 3 hours away from our hometown. My parents never quite understood my choices. They'd constantly remind me that I'm not getting any younger and that the good ones will all be taken. I learned to tune it out over the years, but it definitely strained our relationship. Still, I made an effort to visit them for most holidays and family events, even though they rarely made the trip to see me. Last Christmas was different though. My siblings all had their own plans with their kids, so my parents actually came to visit me for once. We had a nice time, at least I thought we did. We went to see the city lights, had hot chocolate at my favorite cafe, and I even cooked them a proper Christmas dinner. They seemed to enjoy themselves. So when November rolled around this year, I thought I'd extend the invitation again. That's when the weird dance began. I called my mom to invite them for Christmas. She hesitated and said she wasn't sure because my father had been complaining about his back lately. She said she'd ask him and let me know. A week later, I followed up with her about Christmas. She deflected, saying my father wasn't sure about making the drive and suggested I ask him myself. So I called Dad. He immediately pushed the responsibility back to Mom, saying she had mentioned Christmas but hadn't made up her mind yet. He added something about how she always gets with planning things. This went on for weeks. Every time I called, they'd blame it on each other. Neither would give me a straight answer. I was starting to get frustrated, but I kept my cool. Then last week, I got an unexpected opportunity. My old college roommate called me with an offer to house sit and watch her 2 golden retrievers over the holidays. She'd pay me well for it, and honestly, I could really use the extra money for my car repairs. I called my parents to let them know about the opportunity. When I told my mom about the house-sitting job and explained that since they hadn't decided about coming up, I was thinking of taking it, she got defensive. She claimed they had never said they weren't coming. I reminded her that they also never said they were coming, despite me asking since early November. She tried to blame my father again, but I cut her off. I explained how tired I was of their back and forth, with each of them blaming the other when I asked. I told her I needed to give my friend an answer about the house sitting. That's when she accused me of choosing dogs over my own family and got upset about Christmas. I responded by pointing out all the Christmases when they couldn't be bothered to drive up to see me. I explained that I wasn't choosing dogs over family, but rather a sure thing over waiting indefinitely for an answer that might never come. My dad got on the phone then. He tried to guilt-trip me, saying my mother was upset and asking if I was happy about that. When I explained I just needed a clear answer about their plans, he got evasive, saying they might have come, but now I'd made other plans. When I pressed him on whether they would have actually come, he remained non-committal, saying he didn't say that, but they might have. I told them I was taking the house-sitting job but offered to see them the weekend after New Year's if they wanted. They both went quiet. Then my mom started crying about how I don't care about family anymore, and my dad accused me of being selfish. I ended the call and texted my friend to accept the house-sitting job. The next day, my sister called to scold me about being horrible to our parents. Apparently, they had told everyone I was abandoning the family for Christmas. But when I explained what actually happened, she surprised me by laughing. She revealed that they had pulled the same trick with her last Easter, constantly saying they might visit and then getting angry when she made other plans. She advised me to just ignore them. So that's what I'm doing. I'm looking forward to spending Christmas with 2 sweet dogs who are actually excited to see me, making some extra money, and not having to walk on eggshells around my parents' feelings for once. They've been sending passive-aggressive messages through my siblings, but I'm not engaging. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.